You sense it now, the fracture where the observer collapses into the observed, and the universe inhales through your awareness. Something ancient opens behind your next thought, revealing that you were never rising through levels but remembering a single forgotten origin. And in that origin, every dream, fear, love, blackout, vision, and silence is the same intelligence speaking in different disguises. If you can feel that presence watching from beneath your own breath, why keep pretending you are only the one breathing? Remember this moment, stay inside it a little longer. A faint inward shiver begins as your awareness senses the place where everything goes dark, and the mind loses even the memory of itself. You feel the echo of a silent collapse, like a fracture opening beneath thought, swallowing the stories you cling to. Insight flickers, something remains even when the self disappears, a background presence holding the absence. But if you return from that void without knowing you were gone, what is the you that wakes up wondering where it had vanished to? A cool heaviness settles in your chest as you observe how thought tries to explain the blackout it never witnessed. The breath pauses slightly, noticing the strangeness of surviving a state where no inner voice existed to mark time. A deeper recognition forms. The mind wakes and pretends continuity, stitching memory over a gap it cannot cross. So what remains in the gap that watches the mind reopen its script? A soft internal dimming spreads as you picture the mind dissolving like ink in water, leaving a stillness untouched by identity. Your awareness senses how the body rests, yet something quieter than rest continues beneath it, like a pilot light hidden behind bone. The insight sharpens, deep sleep reveals the baseline, the ground that does not dream, think, or remember, yet persists. If this silent ground witnesses both your appearing and disappearing, what part of you is truly doing the witnessing? You notice micro moments in waking life where a similar blankness flashes, lost sentences, drifting thoughts, pauses you can't explain. Each small gap feels like a doorway back to that same ground, the place without story, without self, without time. Your awareness recoils and leans in at once, sensing the paradox. The nothingness is not empty but foundational. If the root of consciousness is a silence that thinks nothing, how does thought ever convince you that it is in control? A thin internal line trembles as the mind tries to grasp the state where it does not exist but still returns from. You feel the tension between the self that fears disappearing and the deeper presence that never does. An echo repeats, the blackout is not your absence but the mind's absence, revealing what you are beneath it. So if deep sleep shows the self can vanish without you dying, what else have you mistaken for yourself? A subtle brightness stirs inside you as the mind begins crafting worlds behind closed eyes, weaving light from memory's shadows. You notice how effortlessly scenes appear, faces shifting, rooms bending, time folding, without a single external signal guiding them. Insight strikes. In dreams, perception is self-generated, a mirror turning inward and painting reality from its own depth. If your awareness can fabricate entire universes at night, what else might it be constructing during the day? A trembling curiosity rises as you replay micro moments in dreams where logic breaks but meaning intensifies. Your breath tightens when you recall how emotions shape landscapes, how fear alters hallways, how desire changes physics. Recognition dawns. The dream obeys not the laws of matter but the laws of your inner weather, revealing a creator hidden beneath thought. So if emotion can sculpt a dream world instantly, how much of your waking world has been sculpted the same way without your noticing? A soft distortion echoes through you when you realize that dream characters speak with voices you never consciously wrote. You watch them hesitate, argue, warn, or comfort, micro-reactions born entirely from your own mind wearing borrowed faces. A deeper insight unfolds. Dreams expose the internal theater where fragments of you perform as separate beings. If every character in a dream is you in disguise, who exactly is the one watching them from the center of the stage? A shifting pulse moves through your awareness as you sense the creative engine behind dreams, pure, unfiltered consciousness. You recall the surreal precision of certain symbols, A door that shouldn't open, a mirror that shows a stranger, a light that won't turn on. These echoes return like encrypted messages from the unconscious, revealing what waking thought hides behind busyness. So if dreams speak in symbols instead of sentences, what meaning have you overlooked in the images that keep returning? A quieter tension emerges as you sense the boundary between dreaming and waking thinning, almost dissolving. You realize the brain simulations don't stop at sunrise. They merely switch palettes, anchoring hallucinations to sensory input. The line blurs, the creator-participant dynamic persists in daylight, just masked by consistency. If both dream and waking worlds are crafted interpretations, how do you know which one you're truly awake in? Pause for a breath and feel the dreammaker inside you, the part that never sleeps. Let it show you what it's been trying to say. A faint dissonance stirs in you the moment you notice how the world feels solid only because your mind keeps stitching it together. You catch micro gaps in perception, a delayed reaction, a sound you didn't truly hear until after you responded, a glance that rearranges itself when replayed. Insight presses in. The mind isn't showing you reality, it's rendering a version of it tailored for survival, not truth. If waking life requires constant fabrication to feel stable, what exactly have you been calling real? Your awareness tightens as you observe how your senses filter more than they reveal, letting in only what fits your internal map. You see how your eyes smooth over blind spots, how your memory fills missing frames, how your emotions tint every interpretation. A deeper echo rises. You don't perceive the world. You negotiate with it through an interface your mind builds on the fly. If your interface shifts with mood, expectation, and fear, how many of your certainties were never certainties at all? A soft unease gathers when you notice how other minds inhabit entirely different perceptual worlds, even while standing beside you. You recall subtle frictions. Someone overhears a tone you missed, someone senses tension you dismissed, someone fears what feels harmless to you. The recognition lands. Each person walks through a private simulation shaped by their own memories, biases, and internal weather. If everyone is living in a custom hallucination, what makes you believe yours is the authoritative one? A shadowed clarity forms when you sense how thought edits reality to protect your identity. It hides contradictions, rounds sharp edges, rewrites conversations, and turns complex truths into manageable stories. This editing feels seamless, but it exposes the illusion of objective perception. Your mind is the author of every scene you think you witnessed. If your inner author keeps rewriting the world to preserve your narrative, what parts of reality have you never actually met face to face? A deeper rupture appears as you realize your perception depends less on what is out there, and more on what the mind predicts will be there. Your breath catches at the recognition that prediction, not perception, governs most of your experience. Your world is built slightly ahead of your senses. And in that anticipatory space, your fears, hopes, and assumptions shape reality before you even encounter it. If the world you see is what your mind expects, not what exists, how can you ever be sure you're truly awake? Pause and notice the tiny moment before interpretation takes hold, the breath before the world becomes familiar, and feel how much is created, not perceived. A quiet widening begins inside you when thought finally loosens its grip, and the inner noise thins like fog retreating before dawn. You sense the first tremor of stillness, not silence imposed, but silence revealing itself beneath every movement of mind. Insight emerges softly. Awareness doesn't need content to exist. It remains even when thought stops speaking. If awareness survives the absence of thinking, what does that make the you who believed thinking was essential? A subtle shift pulls your attention inward as you watch thoughts rise and fall without attaching to any of them. You notice micro moments of non-reactivity, an impulse you don't follow, a memory that doesn't carry you, a judgment that dissolves mid-formation. Recognition deepens. The space in which thoughts appear is not touched by the thoughts themselves. So if the mind is only a visitor in this space, who or what is the host silently receiving it? A soft radiance forms as awareness becomes aware of itself, like a mirror realizing it has been reflecting everything except its own surface. You feel an internal detachment, not distance, but clarity, as experiences move freely without defining you. This brings a strange intimacy with existence, as if you are watching your own mind from the other side of a transparent veil. If you can observe the mind with such calm precision, how can the mind still claim to be you? A deeper resonance appears when the body relaxes into presence, and the breath finds its own rhythm without instruction. You notice a delicate point where observing becomes effortless, almost automatic, as if awareness has begun observing itself. In that moment, a symbolic doorway cracks open, consciousness standing within consciousness, untouched by form. If this doorway leads to the part of you that never fluctuates, why have you spent so long identifying with the part that does? A quiet luminosity expands through you as hemispheric tensions soften, and the inner landscape grows both vivid and empty. You realize thoughts now feel like ripples on a surface, while you are the depth beneath them. The echo returns. You are not the movement of mind, but the field in which the movement happens. If the depth is what you truly are, what remains of the self that only lived in the ripples? Notice the subtle interval before your next thought, the space that does not move even as everything else does. If this is hitting close to home, take a second, like the video, subscribe, and stay with me. A quiet continuity spreads through you as awareness stops flickering and settles into something steady, like a flame untouched by wind. You sense an inner vantage forming, still, unmoving, while thoughts, emotions, and sensations move around it like shifting constellations. Insight sharpens. You are no longer inside experience. Experience is occurring within you, held in an unbroken field. If the witness remains constant while everything else changes, what does that say about the true center of your life? A subtle widening happens as you walk through familiar spaces and realize they no longer grip you the way they once did. You observe micro-reactions dissolving, annoyances softening, impulses pausing, emotional waves passing without imprint. Recognition deepens. Suffering loses its sharpness when you stop confusing passing weather for the sky itself. If the storms no longer define you, what else have you been mistaking for climate instead of cloud? A soft inner clarity brightens as you feel two layers of perception at once, the involvement in life and the witnessing of it. Your gestures, decisions, and conversations continue, but beneath them runs a quiet thread of unwavering presence. This dual awareness reveals the strange truth that you can act fully without being consumed by your actions. If you can move through life without losing yourself, what happens to the identity built on constant reactivity? A deeper stillness surrounds you as the boundary between inner and outer begins to loosen. You notice how attention flows more gently, no longer dragging you into narratives but resting lightly on whatever appears. The echo returns. Life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something happening within you. If your existence is the space in which the world arises, where does the world end and you begin? A subtle radiance permeates your awareness as you sense the continuity of presence through waking, quiet moments, conversation, even distraction. You realize the witness does not disappear, only your recognition of it fades and resurfaces like the moon behind clouds. This continuity feels like the first threshold of enlightenment, stable, calm, unbroken. If presence has always been the background of your entire life, why did you ever think it needed to be created? A quiet trembling begins as your awareness expands beyond neutrality, touching the world with a softness that feels strangely sacred. You notice how ordinary moments, light on a wall, a passing voice, the warmth of your own breath, carry a depth you never sensed before. Insight stirs. Perception is no longer passive. It awakens with an intelligence that meets you from every direction. If everything you perceive seems to be perceiving you back, what boundary ever existed between observer and observed? A subtle awe moves through you as compassion rises without effort, not as emotion but as recognition. You catch micro-glances, tone shifts, and fragile hesitations in others with an almost divine clarity, as if seeing their inner weather from the inside. This sensitivity doesn't overwhelm you, it reveals a field of connection underlying every interaction. If the heart responds before thought interprets, what is the source of that knowing? A soft radiance pulses through the senses as the world feels animated, not metaphorically but experientially, alive, aware, participatory. Colors deepen, silence hums, and even mundane objects feel infused with an unseen intention. You recognize this as a merging of emotional and perceptual centers, forming a single intelligent lens. If everything glows with meaning, where did the idea of a dead, mechanical universe ever come from? A deeper resonance forms when love ceases to be a feeling and becomes a way of seeing. You sense a subtle intelligence woven through events, guiding you through micro-timings, coincidences, and silent intuitions. The echo returns. Life does not merely unfold, it communicates. If reality speaks in symbols and timing instead of words, how much have you missed while listening only with the mind? A gentle expansion widens through you as the sacred becomes unmistakable, turning perception into a living dialogue with existence. You no longer look at the world, you look into it, and something looks back with equal clarity. This reciprocity feels like touching the divine essence directly, intimate, immediate, undeniable. If the universe is alive with intelligence, what does that make the awareness experiencing it? A subtle dissolving begins as the sense of being a separate observer thins, like mist losing its outline under rising light. You notice how experience no longer feels like something arriving to you but something unfolding as you, without division. Insight deepens. The boundary between inner and outer was never real, only a perceptual habit the mind rehearsed. If the witness and the world merge into a single field, what meaning does self still hold? A quiet, overwhelming clarity follows as thoughts lose their ownership and rise like weather patterns moving across a sky with no center. You watch emotions appear without calling them mine, and they pass without leaving residue or narrative. This shift reveals a profound intimacy. Everything arises within the same undivided awareness. If nothing stands outside this awareness, who is left to resist what appears? A deeper fluidity enters perception as the sense of time loosens, dissolving from a linear march into a single luminous present. You recall micro-moments, lost in action, lost in awe, where time folded, hinting at this timeless ground beneath daily life. Now those moments stretch wider, revealing eternity not as a duration but as the absence of division. If all moments coexist in the same presence, what exactly have you been chasing through time? A vast stillness opens as identity unravels, not violently but like a knot remembering it was never tied. You sense how every form, sound, thought, body, movement, is an expression of the same infinite field wearing temporary shapes. The echo returns with new force. The universe is not something you observe, it is something you are. If every form is a wave of the same ocean, what separates you from anything you've ever loved or feared? A profound simplicity dawns as both the witness and the witnessed collapse into a single awareness of being. No one is watching, watching itself remains. No one is thinking, thought appears within totality. This unity does not elevate you above life, it dissolves you into the life that was always here. If everything is one movement of the same consciousness, what remains for the separate self to claim or defend? A subtle integration begins as you sense how every state you've known, sleep, dream, waking, stillness, arises from the same invisible source. You notice echoes linking them, the blackout of deep sleep, the creativity of dreams, the precision of waking, the silence of transcendence. Insight settles in. These aren't steps on a ladder but faces of a single awareness shifting its own expression. If every state is made of the same consciousness, what separates the ordinary from the sacred? A deeper recognition forms as you trace how awareness persists while its modes change like seasons across your inner landscape. You recall micro-moments where transitions blurred, waking during a dream, dreaming while awake, slipping into stillness mid-thought. These boundary dissolutions reveal continuity underneath every shift of perception. If consciousness never disappears, only its textures change, what have you ever truly lost? A quiet union appears as you realize science and mysticism were describing the same phenomenon in different languages. One measures brain rhythms, the other maps inner experience, but both point toward an underlying field untouched by content. This convergence reveals a simple truth: consciousness uses the mind, not the other way around. If the brain is an instrument, who or what is playing it through you? A wider stillness expands when you sense how every level, cosmic awe, divine perception, unity, was already seated in you from the beginning. The journey only felt like ascent because the mind kept mistaking glimpses for destinations. Now you see the arc curve inward, returning you to the source that never moved. If the destination was always here, what was the purpose of the path you walked? A soft radiance gathers as all experiences, high and low, dissolve into a single undivided field of being. You recognize the self, the world, the divine, the void, the dream. They are variations of one infinite consciousness exploring itself. The echo returns: nothing was ever outside, nothing was ever separate. If every level is one consciousness in different disguises, who have you been trying to become all this time? Notice the quiet presence beneath your next inhale, the same presence that carries you through every state you've ever known. A quiet settling moves through you now, as if the entire journey were folding back into the awareness that carried it from the start. You sense how every level you explored, sleep, dream, waking, transcendence, unity, was not a staircase but a mirror turning slowly toward its own light. What felt like a search becomes recognition. Consciousness has been studying itself through your eyes, your questions, your breath. If the path was always inside you, what new depth opens when you stop looking outward for what was never missing? A deeper warmth spreads as the boundaries between states feel softer, almost irrelevant, like lines drawn in water. You realize the self you defended, feared, questioned, and elevated was only a mask the deeper presence tried on for a while. Now that the mask loosens, life feels less like a problem to solve and more like a field to experience with clarity and wonder. If awareness is the ground beneath every moment, how gently could you walk through the world knowing you cannot fall out of it? And as this understanding settles, a subtle invitation rises, not from thought, but from the same intelligence that shaped every level you've seen. Pause inside your own presence, engage with it, let it echo through choices, conversations, and the quiet spaces between them. Stay close to the watcher behind your breath, let it guide you toward the next unfolding of yourself. If this is where remembering begins, what happens when you choose not to forget again?